The movie starts in a quiet neighborhood. Suddenly, a young girl begins to run. She crosses the road, constantly looking back like she's escaping from someone. When she reaches home, her father comes out to check on her. But she just rushes past him, gets into her car, and drives off. She keeps driving for hours, still glancing back as if she's being chased. Finally, she stops at a beach and calls her family. She tells them she loves them and not to worry. After the call, she sits on the beach waiting. The next morning, she's found dead at the same beach, her legs twisted from a violent act. The scene changes to another suburb. Jay, a young girl, is swimming in a backyard pool. Her friends are inside watching a movie, but Jay seems uninterested because she has a date to get ready for. In the evening, she meets her date Hugh at the cinema. As the two are waiting for the show to start, Hugh spots a strange woman in a yellow dress standing at the entrance. He quickly asks Jay if she can see the woman, but Jay says no. Hugh starts to feel uncomfortable and asks if they can leave. Jay asks for the reason, but Hugh simply makes an excuse that he isn't feeling well. After their date, Jay talks excitedly with her friends about Hugh, wanting to start a relationship with him. They go out again that night, dining at a restaurant. While chatting, a strange figure slowly approaches them. Later, they have a romantic moment in Hugh's car at a secluded spot. Suddenly, Hugh attacks Jay from behind, knocking her out with chloroform. When she wakes up, she finds herself tied to a wheelchair in an empty parking lot. Hugh apologizes, explaining that he's cursed by a mysterious entity that follows him since he had a relationship with a girl who passed on the curse. He claims the only way to transfer the curse is through intimate contact. He also warns that the entity can appear in any form, making it impossible to know if it's real. Jay obviously doesn't believe him and starts to scream for help. However, Hugh pushes her to the edge of the building and shows her the entity. Suddenly, Jay sees a strange woman completely naked slowly walking towards her. Hugh tells her she must sleep with someone else to transfer her curse, but if the entity catches up with her, she will be killed. Afterwards, Hugh drives her back to her friend's house and drops her off. Then, before someone catches him, he flees the scene. Jay's friends quickly come to help her. They call the police and Jay is asked several questions about what happened. The police conduct an investigation but find no trace of Hugh, as the boy has been using a pseudonym. The next day in class, Jay notices an old woman in the distance. She is only wearing a nightgown and looks really indecent. Surprisingly, no one else in the class notices her. As a result, Jay realizes this woman is the entity and she is startled. She immediately grabs her bag and leaves, but in the corridor, she encounters the same woman. Terrified, she runs away from the school and heads to a store where her friends Kelly and Paul work. As expected, her friends don't believe her at all, but Paul offers to accompany her to her house that night. Here we learn that Paul has a crush on Jay, so he is willing to go to any extent to be with her. Seeing Jay's courage, everyone agrees to stay by her side to make her feel safe. That night, Jay has a hard time sleeping because she has become paranoid. She sneaks downstairs and finds Paul watching a movie. He tries to comfort her, saying everything will be all right, but she doesn't listen. Just then, they hear the sound of the kitchen window being smashed. Paul goes to check it out, but he doesn't see anything. He gets scared and then rushes upstairs to wake the others. Meanwhile, Jay is left alone downstairs. She decides to check the kitchen herself. To her horror, she finds a scarred woman limping towards her creepily. Jay runs upstairs to her friend's room and slams the door behind her. Everyone tries to calm her down, but Jay is traumatized. She finally admits that she is cursed, but her friends still don't believe her. After a while, one of them decides to open the door, revealing an empty corridor. Jay initially breathes a sigh of relief, thinking it was just a hallucination. But just then, a terrifyingly tall man walks in from behind her friend. She screams and immediately escapes to the balcony through the bedroom window. In the next scene, Jay rides her bicycle to a local park and her friends catch up, trying to calm her down. Seeing Jay become paranoid, the group decides to find Hugh so they can get some answers. Later, the group finds his address and arrives at the place, but it is abandoned. They don't want to give up, so they start looking around for old photos and other clues that point them to Hugh's high school. Upon reaching the school, they finally find his real address and learn his name is Jeff. They promptly go to his house and confront him. Jeff immediately apologizes and explains that the same thing happened to him after a one-night stand. He then reveals that the curse is real, and the only way is to pass it on. Hearing this, Jay and her friends are stunned, and they decide to keep as much distance as possible. Then they start listing potential locations, one suggestion being a friend's lakeside cottage. Jay likes the idea, and they all decide to go there. As time passes, the group forgets all the pain and has the best time of their lives in the lakeside house. until one day, a strange woman approaches Jay from behind. She is the entity of death. This woman grabs Jay's hair, shocking everyone. Paul tries to save his friend, but because he can't see the entity, he can't do anything. When he tries to swing a chair at random, the entity throws him off. Afterwards, the group runs into a nearby shed. Jay grabs a gun and shoots at the entity, but it does little damage. She is terrified, closes the shed door and locks it. Surprisingly, the entity bangs on the door, making a hole at the bottom. Jay waits and sees nothing, but when she approaches the hole, she is startled by a little boy with markings on his face. This indicates that the entity has changed its shape to fit into the hole. Fortunately, Jay escapes from the shed, gets into her car, and then drives away at the fastest speed. But in a state of panic, she hits a cornfield. In the following scene, Jay wakes up in the hospital with all her friends around her. She has minor injuries and learns from her friends that she must stay there for a few days. Hearing this, Jay starts to panic again, as she believes the entity will trap her in the hospital. But her friends calm her down and assure her they'll be by her side. It is at this moment that Jay realizes she can end all this. All she has to do is have intercourse with someone and pass on the curse. Fortunately, Greg agrees to do it with her because he still doesn't believe in the curse and wants her to feel normal. That night, the two share a beautiful moment in the hospital bed. A few days later, Jay is watching over Greg's house when she notices someone breaking in through his front window. Jay is surprised that she can still see the entity and quickly calls Greg to warn him. Unfortunately, no one answers, so she has to rush to his house. She finds the entity disguised as Greg's mother, knocking on Greg's bedroom door upstairs. Jay tries to warn Greg, but Greg opens the door and dies painfully. Jay is terrified, rushes out of the house and drives away. She knows the entity is now tracking her again. She is terrified and shocked by what she just witnessed, so she heads to a beach as far away as possible. There, she sees some boys and tries to seduce them into having intercourse. However, she changes her mind at the last moment and goes home. The next day, Paul volunteers to help Jay. He admits that he likes her and mentions that he is willing to take on the curse if it's the only way to ensure her safety. However, this time Jay refuses and instead comes up with a plan to kill the entity once and for all. Later, the surviving group of friends drive to a nearby swimming pool and break in. They bring various appliances planning to electrocute the pool water. Jay acts as bait, waiting in the pool for the entity. After some time, she sees it enter. But when it starts throwing things into the pool, their plan goes wrong. The entity seems clever. Jay gets scared. She dives underwater to hide. Her friends try to help but can't find the entity. Paul takes out a gun and tries to shoot, guided by Jay, but accidentally hits a friend's leg. One friend covers the entity with a blanket, allowing Paul to shoot it. The entity falls into the pool. They think they've succeeded and Jay swims out. But the pool fills with red liquid. The entity is gone. Their plan fails again. Jay realizes it can't be killed. She changes her mind and sleeps with Paul. The curse transfers to him. In the end, Paul looks for someone to pass the curse to. He sees two women and stops to talk to them. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you on the next video.